Hi there, it's Richard Little from your land partner. I'm going to talk today about designation, and this is designation of buildings, sites, land, etc., which we use for our initial assessment. So just to describe what designation it means in this particular case. So it's an area that has a specific use. It's actually allocated a use. So to give you an example of some of the designations that we commonly look for or find is historic buildings, scheduled ancient monuments, listed buildings, etc. Now, all of those, depending on where you are, in England, you will find lists on historic England. So there's a National Heritage List, and that's pretty much the most comprehensive. You'll also find on some local planning authorities lists of all the historic buildings and sites in those actual areas, and you'll also find an extra level, which is what we call locally listed, which actually means it has local interest. So do not ignore that by any means, despite what people might tell you, because it can actually catch you out. So anything in terms of scheduled ancient monuments, historic buildings, different classifications of listed buildings, we are looking to find out what a particular opportunity we're looking at actually is. Now, we might be looking at an empty piece of land, so we are also looking at any sites of any historic interest close by. Not even just adjacent to, but maybe 200 yards away, 400 yards away, 800 yards away, because depending on the importance of those actual buildings, those monuments, it could have a big impact on what we are possibly likely to be able to put on a given site. Other things like World Heritage Sites, for instance, sites of special scientific interest. There's numerous amounts, and certain local areas have different different designations for different things where there's different interests, and certain heathland in some parts of the country. So you've got to be aware of what it is in a given area. If you're in Scotland or Wales, then you're going to go to a different website, if you like. You're going to the historic environment, like Scotland, historic environment, Wales, CATW website, and you will find it. So don't look for this stuff unless it's a .gov.uk, because there are other lists out there, and some of them are fairly accurate, but you need to be finding the ones that are actually bang up to date. Now, beyond that, certainly once we get down to more local information, is it in or adjacent to a conservation area? That's really, really important. So it isn't just within a boundary, it can be adjacent or can have a view to or a view from. So there's all sorts of things that we're looking for here. Other things is a lot of people think of green belt. That gets bandied around quite a lot. That's quite important. There is a distinction between green belt and green field. Don't worry about that at the moment, but we're looking to find out what this site is. So brown field, so that's been previously built on, might be a building on there now, but it might be redundant, or it may well have been cleared, but it was brownfield. It's been previously developed. Yeah, and that could be anywhere. It could be in the middle of the countryside. So we'll have other things like employment zones, which we catch in some areas, local centres, which could be retail centres, key shopping centres, etc. Now, yes, that some of those things may change as we go through different changes to planning, etc. But right at this moment in time, if something is actually designated as a retail, a local centre, you might have seen them, parade of shops, 5 or 6 shops, possibly flats above, possibly not. It's not necessarily that easy to get those planning permissions changed, and actually they can be removed from, or have been removed from, permitted development prior approval. Under many of you are under what we call an Article 4. Article 4 is a restriction, something that you can't do. We'll be talking about a lot more about the detail of planning, etc. in future videos. But now, in the initial assessment, we're just looking to find what designation there may be. So other designations are industrial, retail, commerce. I mentioned retail before, but commerce, so areas where there are offices, and actually, again, it's removed from any existing prior approval permitted development because it's designated as an area and it's removed from other prior approval permit development. We're also looking to see if a site that we're looking at is allocated. There's particularly stuff that's perhaps outside current boundaries or just inside current boundaries. Is it allocated? So is it been allocated in the local plan? So this is where we talk about this all the time. You have to have local knowledge. We can sit on here and we can tell you all the generalisation, but every one of you is going to be in different areas and it may be subtly different. So we need to understand what designations are, what policies are, etc. But any allocated sites is quite important. Now, an allocated site, allocated for development, does not mean to say you're going to get planning consent. So please don't make that mistake. As is an unallocated site doesn't mean to say you won't get planning permission, so you need to do a little bit more work. But at the moment, so all I'm really talking about today is what we look for in the initial assessment in terms of designation. We are just looking for information. We're not going to dig too deep until we have in much more relevant dialogue or a bit further along the line talking to the land and building owners. We're actually looking at just that information, as I say, particularly if it's a listed building of some sorts, next to a listed building, conservation area, is it inside the boundary or outside the boundary of a settlement, has it been previously built on? We're just looking for that information. So this is stuff that you can do from your desk, on your computer or wherever you might be, on your phone or whatever. You can get that information and it's pretty straightforward. Some people can get that, other people to do it. Obviously we have team members that do this for us, people have VAs that do all this sort of stuff. Find out everything you can about that particular site in terms of what planning opportunities there might be. We're looking initially for any restrictions, but the restrictions help us understand what the opportunities are. So there's not much else I can say about designation. It's really, really important. The information is there. It's not hard to get. But because it's not hard to get, unfortunately, some people don't bother and can go a long way down scheme designs, negotiations, even acquisition, and suddenly find there is something that is designated, which means that we can't do what they're planning to do. And unfortunately, this happens far too much, not just with newer developers, but actually with some experienced developers that are perhaps going into something they haven't done before. They might be doing, new builds, and then they come up for a conversion project and they possibly don't know quite enough about it. So designation is so important, and it can be, very rarely is it a red flag. It just means for us often, if we're looking at a site and it's next to an ancient monument or a significant listed building, we will generally walk away. Not that somebody can't get planning consent, but for us, it's generally not worth the effort. We will definitely talk about that on another occasion. So this has been Richard Little from Your Land Partner, and I will see you again next time. Take care.